There's a lot of uncertainty right now about the acting Attorney General Matt Whitaker and the president's nominee to permanently take over the position, William Barr. But while we wait to see what happens there, we're taking a look back at a really important action by the last person in that office, Jeff Sessions. On his final day as Attorney General, Sessions signed a last-minute order limiting the use of a tool for criminal justice reform called consent decrees. More than a dozen cities have these agreements with the Department of Justice to improve local courts and police departments. And while the order from Sessions effectively prevents more consent decrees, it also sent a signal that the DOJ is not a partner for reform. Ferguson, Missouri is one of the places currently under a consent decree. All-In correspondent Tremaine Lee went there to find out what's at stake for its residents now.
So this is the spot right here?
Yes, where my son lay for 4.5 hours, took his last steps and his last breath.
Does it shock you when you think about just what came from your son's death?
It does. I never knew so many people were watching and paying attention, you know. I also never knew that this happened to so many people before it happened to my son.
The killing of Michael Brown by a police officer in 2014 sparked an uprising in Ferguson, Missouri.
You must leave immediately.
When the smoke cleared, a Department of Justice investigation exposed systemic racism practiced by the Ferguson Police Department in the courts. Black people were disproportionately stopped and searched by police. The city balanced its budget by fining black citizens. Ferguson police routinely used force. Nearly 90% of the time, it was against black people.
A community where all of these conditions, unlawful practices, and constitutional violations severely undermined the public trust, eroded police legitimacy, and made local residents less safe.
The Obama administration got fully involved, bringing the full weight of the Justice Department on Ferguson. Finally, in 2016, the city reluctantly agreed to reforms, oversight, and independent monitoring.
It was really important to have federal intervention. The Department of Justice kind of came in and was able to say, no, this is a problem. You're pulling too many people over. The racial disparities are alarming and you need to stop it. And having kind of the weight of the Department of Justice in that situation helped to legitimize the concerns of protesters and further the push for reforms.
Months later, Donald Trump became president. Jeff Sessions became Attorney General. The dismantling of police reform began across the country.
Law enforcement will be respected.
You are the thin blue line. Police are not the problem. The criminals are the problem.
Sessions expanded the use of private prisons. He called for harsher punishments for minor crimes. And when he was pushed out of office, his final act was to limit consent decrees, hamstringing the power of the federal government to force cities like Ferguson to reform its courts and police. There are a number of people, including former Attorney General Jeff Sessions, who say that the consent decrees are unnecessary. What do you say to that?
I would question the credibility of the former Attorney General with respect to this particular issue.
Wesley Bell is the newly elected prosecutor of St. Louis County. He will be the first African-American to hold that office. He unseated Bob McCullough, the 27-year incumbent who refused to indict the officer that killed Michael Brown.
We put in a lot of work to get where we are today and implement some of the most broad reforms in the country. And I would rather the former Attorney General just support what we're doing as opposed to using this as a political punchline or what have you.
Why does reform, especially in this community, really matter?
We're talking about the livelihoods of thousands of people. We're talking about families just being able to go to the grocery store and come home without being pulled over, just for the quality of life of people in Ferguson, for black people in St. Louis County. Actualizing these reforms is absolutely necessary to turn around a culture that has historically been oppressive to communities of color.
But it costs a lot, and you're lowering morale.
Yeah, there's no cost to justice. There really is not anything too expensive to preserve the rights of people.
For Leslie McSpadden, reform is personal. Her son's killing revealed widespread abuse in Ferguson. Now she's hoping to change the system from within by running for city council.
I've had to deal with the tear gas. I've had to deal with the racist cops, the disgusting comments. And Ferguson is full of children. It's important that we secure their futures, that we try to restore the trust between the community and the police department.
When you think about you becoming part of this political process, does it feel like you're an extension of your son's legacy and continuing that fight from August 2014?
Absolutely. I will be the person to define my son's legacy.
Tremaine Lee joins me here now. That's great reporting, actually. Just it's great to see those folks and see what's new there. I guess the first question here is, how are things in Ferguson? You know, you and I are both down there reporting on it when everything happened in 2014. What was your sense just talking to people there, how it is now?
As much has changed, so much has remained the same. People were so hopeful for a while there. Eric Holder come to town, the DOJ validated so many of the concerns they've had for years, but progress is still slow. You know, you talk to the independent monitor. She says, you know, the city is working in good faith. You talk to the new police chief who was tasked with kind of reforming policy. He says, hey, we're making progress. When Ferguson happened, there was only 2 black officers on the force, now there's about 17. He points to the color, the complexion, but that doesn't change policing in a city that is beleaguered at best, right? So folks in the community are still struggling. They're still trying to heal.
You know, that DOJ document is one of the most shocking things I've ever read.
Scathing.
I mean, what it reveals, I wrote about it in my last book, I mean, it reveals a system of total predation on the part of the police, basically using primarily black citizens as means of extracting revenue, first and foremost, as opposed to ensuring their safety. Have those specific policies and practices identified the DOJ, have those stopped under the consent decree?
At least one of the things that stood out to me, there were many things, the police sticking dogs on people and biting their citizens. But one of the big things with the statute that will stand out is there were more warrants than people in the city.
That's exactly
Now, they dismissed a whole bunch of the warrants, but still, on any given night, the line is still wrapped around the building and it's full of black people. And so regardless of what policy progression is made, people in the community still see what they see in policing of black people.
Has there been a change from the people you talk to about what this consent decree on the ground looks like under the Trump administration as opposed to under the Obama administration?
There are a lot of people who have been paying attention to just the attitude that Jeff Sessions came in with.
Right.
He came in saying that it lowers morale, they're no good. Time and again, he refers to like states' rights, that the federal government's role is not to police, no pun intended, local city government.
Right.
And so people see that, but the process has been so slow on the ground in Ferguson, they still haven't implemented policy yet. So there's still no policy change. Nothing has changed.
So they're just developing new policies under the consent decree.
Developing the policy.
So it will matter a lot to those folks what leadership at DOJ looks like in the coming years, right?
Without question, because there had always been that big hammer hanging over the city. That if they don't do right and don't reform, that the federal government will sue you, right? Now that's been frozen.
That's a really good point. Tremaine Lee, as always, man, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.